Hi, how are y'all doing? Awesome. Thanks for coming out. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I think the difference between creativity and appropriation is. And I think that it's something that we all need to look at ourselves about. I think that I'm going to start this with a very simple sentence. I'm going to end it with the same sentence. We can't let philosophies that were born from forced impoverishment turn into an impoverishment of philosophy. That's what we cannot let happen. I think that I'm going to raise more questions than I'm going to answer, and I hope you'll leave questioning everything that we do. The one thing that I've had hanging in my office since we opened the restaurant is an African proverb, and it says that until the lion can write his own story, the story of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. And the history books were written by people that decided what was going to be in them. And I'm not saying that what's in them is false, but there's a lot of omission in our history books. There's a lot of things that I didn't understand until I really started cooking and paying attention to what it was that I was cooking and the reason that these things exist and the reason that they've persisted. You want to talk about things like turnip greens, right? So the people that lived in the plantations ate turnips and they ate pork chops. And they gave the leaves of those turnips to their slaves and the feet of the pigs that they ate from to those slaves. If you stop 150 Southerners, I would bet that 100 of them would tell you that turnip greens are the most Southern food there is. But we don't learn about why. We don't learn about that. It's not taught to us as children. And I can also prove to you that food is as much a person in history as anything else. Would anyone feel uncomfortable if I said, let's all go out and eat Oriental food? You should. It's Asian food, right? That's because the history of people is so closely tied to the struggle of what it is that we've come to find in the food. We don't eat the food of kings and queens. We eat the food of peasants. We eat the food that people struggled to figure out how to cook. Not because of, well, as much because of what they had or what they weren't allowed to have. These recipes and these ways that we eat and the ways that we cook took centuries for people to figure out. And now you can just go look on the internet and figure out how to do it. But you literally, when you present a dish, at least in my opinion, you present history. You present real history. And on the same wave, globalization is not a thing of the internet. You want to talk about Italy, Marco Polo brought pasta, Christopher Columbus brought tomatoes. It's not Italian. It's from two different places. It's true, sorry. I think that the how and the why of food are equally important. How do you do it? Why do we do it? Why do we cook the way we do? How did people that didn't have scientists figure out how to make complete proteins and figure out how to nourish themselves? It's a lot of trial, it's a lot of tribulation, and there's a struggle that I think that we can't ignore. I think that we have to give credence. If we're really, at some point, going to come to this society where we really do rely on each other's strengths, we have to understand each other's sorrow as well. Because there's a lot of joy in presenting food, but there's sorrow in food. There is. There's thought. There's emotion that goes into it. And I don't mean to be overly esoteric about a salad either. But these dishes that you think about Asian cultures, you think about African American cultures here in the United States. They went through a lot to give us what we have identified with. And we don't know why we identify. Or maybe we do know and we don't want to talk about it. But there's a conversation that I think is important to take. I think as human beings, it's our responsibility to know the history of what we're doing. As creative human beings, as I think chefs are, I think that the first thing you need to do when you're talking about food and you want to do a dish or you want to research something is I think that you need to research why it is the way it is. And I think that when you come to that why and you put something in your restaurant or you start cooking a certain way, if you have taken the ability for someone to tell their own story away from them, as a creative, you need to get out of the way. You should let people be able to tell their stories. That being said, I serve greens at my restaurant. And I'm not the same person I was 10 years ago when we opened Iris. I look at myself a whole lot differently, and I think about food a whole lot differently. I think that knowledge and acceptance are a big part of what we need to do with each other and to grapple with the stuff in the history books that aren't included in them. It's honoring a more than likely brutal history of anywhere you go. You talk about Asia, you talk about the Middle East, you talk about slaves and African American culture here in the United States. I'll say it and then I'll leave the stage. We cannot let philosophies that were born out of impoverishment turn into an impoverishment of philosophy. And I think that's a very important thing that we all need to take forward and think about when we're eating food that's been thoughtfully prepared. Just make sure there's thought in it. Thank you.